Native people, Native culture, Native knowledge. Hi, I'm Jeannie Green, bringing you award-winning Heartbeat Alaska.
Bringing you national and international Native news, this is award-winning Heartbeat Alaska, the premier Native voice in Native programming.
There's a heartbeat, louder than thunder, revolution is in the air. There's a heartbeat deep inside our mother. Are you too cool?
Tribal sovereignty, tribal sovereignty, tribal sovereignty.
Hi, this is Jeannie Green. Today we're proud to bring you a special report, a 2-hour report from the Alaska Intertribal Council's 9th Annual Convention. The theme this year, Government to Government, Tribes Taking Action.
We want to be heard, we want to be felt, you know. And it's just like the old timers used to say back home, who's going to take our place? Who? That's what my grandfather used to say. Who's going to take our place? Who's going to lead us?
There was always opposition to this. This shows you the voice and the action of the people. No one knew what...
And what happens with this new Congress, it's going to have a lot of ramifications back.
We're at a period in our time as Indigenous peoples that we need to look and start taking action if we want to control our future and create that future for our children.
The year 2000 has been an eventful year filled with challenges and anticipation as we move forward to better the lives of our tribal members and communities. This year, you will hear special addresses from distinguished leaders throughout the state and nation. Ada Deer of the Menominee Nation and former Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs will present the keynote address. We welcome back John Echohawk, Executive Director of the Native American Rights Fund, whose perspective on legal Indian issues will provide us with insight and direction. Heather Kendall Miller and Laird Ashenbrenner of NARP will provide legal updates for Alaska. We will hear from our local tribal leaders who have taken action on issues such as health care, tribal courts, tribal housing, and military cleanup. We will also hear from the panel of federal agencies which have taken steps to ensure tribal consultation with Alaska's tribes. Finally, a roundtable discussion on the partnership project will occur, as well as a brief history of ANILCA, the 20th year anniversary. At last year's convention, Governor Knowles invited Alaska's tribes to begin government-to-government discussions with the state to improve relations. In February, our tribal leaders chose a team of 48 to begin these discussions with the state. On September 29th, my birthday, I'm still 29 though, Governor Knowles signed Administrative Order 186 recognizing Alaska's 227 federally recognized tribes. Now we are embarking upon a draft Millennium Agreement that will further set the foundation for improving the tribal and state relationship. It has been a pleasure working with the National Congress of American Indians, in June 2000, we hosted the mid-year convention in Juneau. We appreciate the hard work NCI does on behalf of all Indian country. In closing, I would like to express my sincere appreciation for the continuing support of our membership tribes and the sponsors who contributed to make this convention possible. It is my hope that this convention will leave each and every one of you a spark of empowerment and courage to make positive changes in your communities.
Because we have been bluffed for so many years, and I hate to see a new governor turn this agreement down. So only way we can be able to make noise is to have directly with the federal government, and in any way, shape, or form we can. If we don't practice our sovereign authority in the eyes of the the federal government, our rights will be eroding.
Ada Deer, distinguished lecturer in social work and director, American Indian Studies program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, is an activist, advocate, and leader not only in obtaining rights for American Indians and others of color, but for all people. As the first woman Assistant Secretary, Department of the Interior for Indian Affairs, she devoted herself to advocacy for the sovereignty of Indian tribes and developed a policy to gain congressional respect for the rights of Indian people. She was the first woman chair of the Menominee tribes and supervised implementation of the Menominee Restoration Act, which gave sovereignty back to her tribe. She has been a leader in the National Association of Social Workers in developing caucuses for diversity and within the Native American Rights Fund in protecting rights of tribes and individuals. As an educator, she has been tireless in her work to enhance educational opportunities for minority students. She helped the University of Wisconsin in establishing a multicultural center designed to foster cultural awareness and understanding among students and faculty and provide educational formation to the entire university. Again, I'd like to welcome back to our home, Ada Deer.
The average tenure for a political appointee is 19 months, and I stayed 4 years. Now, signing this document with this list proclaiming the sovereignty of the Native tribes of Alaska, I consider the highest achievement of my administration. And it was many people think that natives are little brown people wandering around, cluttering up the planet, and impeding progress. Now, everyone needs to understand that the native tribal peoples, cultures, and governments were here first. So this means that each of you has to continue to undertake an educational campaign. Julie talked about educating the new Congress and the new administration. That, of course, is extremely important. But if all the people in the legislature really understood the native people and cultures, one wouldn't have the difficulties that we're having, not only here in Alaska, but elsewhere. So, advocating for tribal government. So, this means that every one of you has to do your homework. Now, I didn't bring my books with me, but there are wonderful books that will help you understand the contributions of Native peoples to the world. One is called Indian Givers by Jack Weatherford. How the natives, the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere transformed the world. And the other one is Native Roots, which is by the same author, and he talks about the impact of natives on the U.S. These are all paperbacks. They're easily accessible. And if I come back again, I'm going to check in and see if you've done your homework. Because you yourself have to have a full understanding and appreciation of the Native peoples and cultures. Now, during the almost 20 years now that I've been coming up to Alaska, I visited every museum that I could, every historical society, and I remember reading in the State Historical Museum in Juneau about the Native contributions here. And I was reading about the kayaks. Way at the bottom, I could barely read it. It stated that the kayak is the most perfect design architecturally. It has never been improved on. It fulfills all of its basic requirements, and it's a little known and appreciated fact that this was done and developed by the Native peoples here. So just think about this one contribution, the kayak, and how it's used in the Olympic Games today. But the Natives don't get the credit that they should have. And so there's lots of work that needs to be done there. But reading, knowing the contributions is a great strength. I wish that I had had this when I was in school. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but I think in kind of circles. So we'll get back to some of the main points here. That means that we have to have educated people. We have to have the infusion of information on the Natives in the schools. Now, this is a continuing issue and a continuing problem, not only for Alaska, but for other places across the country. Now, when I came to Alaska on one of my trips as Assistant Secretary, I was very moved and touched by the deep respect, friendship, and hospitality that the Native leaders demonstrated to me and to others. When I got off the plane in Kaktovik, there were all the officials greeting me and shaking my hand. And that was a beautiful sight to see. The Native people, the leaders, the mayor, and the whaling commissioner, and various other people there shaking my hand. When I got off the plane in Kotzebue, who did I see but Willie Hensley? And there were other people there. And Willie looked at me, because we've known each other a long time. He said, well, usually when people come from Washington, we're seeing the great white father. But in your case, you're the big brown mama. So I thought about that, and I said, yes, I'll agree with that. Now, I work at becoming smaller, but was mentioning earlier the age of Julie. So let me say, and I love to tell my young nieces and nephews here, hey, 65 and still alive. So this, of course, gets into another whole issue of health. And we all need to have good health services, good health programs, but we have to take responsibility for ourselves. So I tell people, I live right. I'm the healthiest fat person I know. So we have to take care of ourselves, and I can't emphasize this enough. The census is going to be coming out soon, and I predict that the Native peoples will again be at the bottom. Now, it should be a little better than the previous time. We'll probably still be at the bottom. So every single person in here has to take much more responsibility for their own personal health. Think with compassion, act with compassion, generosity, kindness, cooperation, and throw aside some of the old attitudes, old behaviors, and look ahead to this new time that we have before all of us. So this means that you all have to do your homework, you have to understand what the power structure is, and then work to become part of it and to influence it to your advantage. Now, defeating discrimination has never been easy, but your day will come. And again, I want to commend all of the Native legislators in the legislature, and that you do have a candidate here, Sarah Scanlon, who ran, hard race, but wasn't elected this time. So there's always next time. And I want all of you to think about the children in your villages. I can envision the day when there is an Alaska Native governor, when there is an Alaska Native congressperson, when there is an Alaska Native senator, and they are there in your villages, in your communities right now. No one thought that this little girl on my reservation, I had braids, I had thick glasses, I carried my books all the time. I got criticized for being a bookworm. Well, I love books. I tell people there was life before television, computers, and radios. It's called books, right? So, and I didn't envision this myself. I didn't know anything about the government when I was a young kid. But by following my own path with the encouragement of good teachers and good education, I achieved the highest position within, well, one of the highest positions in the federal government. I enjoyed telling Denzel Washington once when I went to a film festival that I was the #1 Indian in the country. He laughed, shook my hand, and congratulated me, right? Okay. I say, continue to fight every day, in every way, and in every available forum. The courts, the Congress, the federal executive branch, the state executive branch, yes, and even in the state legislature. The legislature will likewise one day be compelled to recognize that discrimination against Native tribes is not only legally and morally wrong, it is not in the best interests of the state. Sovereignty is inherent, it's non-negotiable, and it has stood the test of time. You are here in the year 2000 to continue the wonderful traditions of the Native peoples of Alaska. Sovereignty.
On behalf of the Alaska Intertribal Council, we'd like to present you with a pair of caribou dance fans and a pin, which is a traditional Alutiiq hat made out of ivory.
Thank you very much. I shall certainly treasure these, and they will be on my wall in my home. And I would point out that I do have my Alaska pin with the state flag, and I, in my research, was so moved and inspired to know that a Native Alaskan student designed this. So this is a continual reminder of the beauty and talents of the Alaska Native people. So thank you again.
John Echo Hawk was also a member of the Clinton Gore transition team for the Department of the Interior in 1992. Mr. Echo Hawk has been listed as one of the 100 most influential lawyers in America by the National Law Journal since 1988. And it has been an honor for me to be on the NARF board for the last 4 years, and I am serving on the last 2 years of the 2 years, and I will be hunting for my replacement in the next couple of years. So, so if I call you to be on the NARF board, then be prepared. But it has been an honor, and I've learned a lot in that board for the last 4 years, and it has been, again, an honor to serve as a NARF board member. And without any further, John Echo Hawk.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be back up here in Alaska. I've been coming up here for the last 30 years, off and on, and of course things have changed a lot in that time. I think, much to think about in the context of the accord that's being discussed between the tribal governments and the state of Alaska. And, as I said, I'm here to listen and learn and watch you all deal with these issues that you're confronting now. I think we need to follow the advice that Ada gave the tribal leadership here this morning, and that is to exercise some vision. That's, of course, part of your responsibilities as tribal leaders, and to think about the negotiation of the accord as another step in this long sequence of events that I just went through, from ANCSA and what happened there, and through the Venati decision, and now negotiation and discussion on the accord, and hopefully you'll be able to reach agreement on that and be able to demonstrate to people here in Alaska and around the country that Alaska tribes do have a very important role in government up here in Alaska, that if they can be given even more opportunities, they ought to be given those opportunities through amendments to the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, that one of these days could repeal the bad decision that we got in the Venati case and restore, at least to some degree, the jurisdiction of tribal governments over Indian country here in Alaska. We're committed to working with you all on these sovereignty issues and these subsistence issues. At the Native American Rights Fund, we've been with you a long time, and we're going to be with you a lot longer, because these are truly important Native American rights issues, and of course that's what the organization, the Native American Rights Fund, is set up to do, to protect these rights, whether they're in Alaska or anywhere else in this country. I wanted to bring you an overview of some of the national issues that tribes are facing right now, and hopefully, give you an appreciation of the fact that just like the tribes in lower 48, you're affected by these issues as well, and I think are probably watching all of these issues with us as well too. These international developments that Julie Kitka talked about this morning are really very important issues. It's another forum that we can use to address these native rights issues, and one that we haven't really developed fully, but I think one that maybe we can and might be useful to us here in the future. The Native American Rights Fund Board here just a few years ago, after much discussion and study, decided to commit some of the resources of the Native American Rights Fund to this international indigenous rights set of issues. And in accordance with that, we've undertaken representation of the National Congress of American Indians in all of these international forums. Of course, the NCAI is a national Indian organization representing, I think, almost 300 tribes now, right, Mike? Mike, of course, serves as Area Vice President from Alaska for NCI, so even though NCI has tried to participate in these international meetings before, they've always had difficulty doing that, and have always done so without access to legal counsel. But now we are there with them. We're helping them raise the money to attend these meetings on a regular basis, and again, it may take a while, but again, my prediction is, again, using this vision that Ada was saying we all got to have, that one of these days we're going to make some inroads in this international legal arena, and that's going to put more pressure on the United States of America to live up to its obligations under the Constitution and laws and treaties of this land relating to our Native American tribes. Meanwhile, domestically, we continue to press Native rights issues in the courts and in the Congress and in the White House just as best we can, again in a very strategic and a very deliberate manner. we have a lot of focus at the Native American Rights Fund on what's happening in the United States Supreme Court. And this term, the court has taken 4 Native American cases so far, and we're tracking them very carefully. One of those cases is one where we represent the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe in Nevada and their tribal court, and the issue here is tribal court jurisdiction over state officials. We have won in the lower courts. We have established that tribal courts have jurisdiction over state officials when they come on the reservation, and that the tribal courts have jurisdiction to determine whether these state officials are immune from suit based on the state's limited immunity from suit. But that's an issue for the tribal courts to decide. This is an issue we've won in the lower courts, but the Supreme Court's decided to review this, so it's really a very important case for all of us relating to the jurisdiction of our tribal courts. The court has taken 2 other cases that the tribes have won in the lower courts too, and have them scheduled for review. These are always really very scary propositions. The court too often in years past has taken these cases that the tribes have won in the lower courts and then reversed them when they've decided them, oftentimes by very close votes, and results in kind of a continual erosion of our tribal sovereignty. So always really very concerned about what the court does. They took a case involving the citizen band Potawatomi in the state of Oklahoma. The issue involves what it takes for a tribal government, of course being immune from suit without its consent, what it takes to waive that immunity. And in this particular case, it involves a contract that the citizen band Potawatomi tribe of Oklahoma entered into that purported to say that they agreed to resolve any disputes with this construction company that they contracted with in an arbitration scenario, and any arbitration award would be enforceable in a court. So the question is, well, which court, and does this language amount to a waiver by the tribe knowingly of its immunity from suit? And of course the court or the lower court decided that this was not sufficient language to give state courts jurisdiction over this contract to enforce this arbitration award. And again, we're really very concerned about what the Supreme Court might do to interpreting how we waive our tribal sovereign immunity. The third case that the tribes won in the lower court that the court's reviewing now is out of the Navajo Nation, Atkinson Trading against Shirley. This is a case that involves taxation, tribal taxation of a non-Indian business located within the reservation boundaries that does business with Indians and non-Indians. It's a business that's located on fee land, non-Indian land, but it's within the reservation boundaries. And this company is complaining that the tribal government should not be able to tax a non-Indian business even though it's within the reservation, and is screaming about non-Indians paying taxes to tribal governments. Well, this has been a very well-established principle in past Indian law cases for many years now, that tribes can tax non-Indians on reservations, within reservation boundaries. And I'm not sure what's different about this case, so that's what really scares us, to look at what the court's done here and decided to review this case. So maybe they're going to review this whole issue of tribal taxation over non-Indians and maybe put some limitations on that. Again, it's just a very, very dangerous court, a very scary proposition for us. In a pleasant surprise, we're always asking the court to take these cases, these rare cases that we lose in the lower courts, and reverse those so that we end up winning in the U.S. Supreme Court. And wins in the U.S. Supreme Court have not been very plentiful here. We've been through a lot of challenges before together, and we can rise to the occasion and fight back if we need to. As again, Ada said here this morning, I couldn't say it any better. These sovereignty issues are really a very important part of our tribal traditions and our tribal cultures. We've been in these sovereignty fights since the first contact in 1492. We're still in them today. We'll continue to fight them, and we'll do that because we know that that's an important part of us, and we know that if we keep working on them, that we can prevail and improve the lives of our people. So I encourage you to remember that as you proceed through your deliberations here at the conference. And again, I'm pleased to be able to be here with you and to listen and learn and watch as you tackle these important issues facing tribal governments in Alaska. Thank you.
I'm president of Ketchikan Indian Corporation, and my Haida name is Dikista, which means asking for something. Served me well in Washington, D.C., Juneau, Anchorage, wherever I go politically.
And what are your feelings about this conference?
I feel this conference is a positive conference. I know that we've been working on this government-to-government relationship. I'm the alternate for Joe Williams on the panel, on the team, and I think this is a positive step for the tribes and the state of Alaska to work together. Economically, in each community, this will affect the economy of each community, because with the state and the tribes working together, I think it will flow better business. I also think that talking about the relationship that AITC has with the state is an excellent relationship that they've formed in working together. The tribes that send representatives to the meetings, they go back home and give all the information, and the people are happy that they are a part of this and that we are going to work together. It's 2001's just around the corner. We need to work together. This is good business.
Mike actually pretty much gave you the entire report. And I can say ditto. Thank you very much.
But the tickets don't do that. He's just pulling your leg.
We were selected back in February of year 2000. There were 48 representatives from all regions of Alaska to represent their respective regions. Our first meeting that was held as an organizational meeting was held in March right here in Anchorage. And at that time, I was given the honor to be selected as the chairman of the tribal portion, or the tribal side of the negotiation team, as it was dubbed at the early on in the process. We worked out some ground rules, and we all agreed on the ground rules, and then went into the official meeting in May with Governor Tony Knowles actually right in this room. We were selected back in February of year 2000. There were 48 representatives from all regions of Alaska to represent their respective regions. Our first meeting that was held as an organizational meeting was held in March right here in Anchorage. And at that time, I was given the honor to be selected as the chairman of the tribal portion, or the tribal side of the negotiation team, as it was dubbed at the early on in the process. We worked out some ground rules, and we all agreed on the ground rules, and then went into the official meeting in May with Governor Tony Knowles actually right in this room. And with this, keep in mind the numbers of committees that was appointed at the March meeting. One was the Education Committee, Finance Committee, and then at that time was called the Accord Committee. And various chairmen were appointed to serve on those particular committees. And my thought in reference all that was occurring at that time back in May was to get the plenary sessions out of the heart of Alaska, which in this case is considered to be Anchorage because it's closest to most everything. My thought was to get these plenary sessions into the villages of where you folks live. And I then first selected the place of Saxman. That's where I'm from. Then my Yupik brother got note of it and he said, that's too far to go. And as chairman, he overruled me. This is a joke, guys. Now, come on. Well, as it turned out, the Alaska Intertribal Council Board felt that it was too far. And please understand, at that time, we were operating out of the pockets of our own coffers back at the villages of who we represent. And it wasn't until the May meeting that we had requested for some funding from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, of which we then were able to achieve $100,000 from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And I just want to take a quick side note here, and that is for you folks who know who the Bureau of Indian Affairs officials are, like Niall Caesar and Warren, I would encourage you to thank them. Because had they not participated financially, we would not have a document today. Let me reiterate that. Had the Bureau of Indian Affairs, through the support of Niall Caesar and Warren, we would not have a document today. So it's very important to be able to go to them and say thank you very much for supporting the tribes of Alaska. Then we held the meeting in Ketchikan and Saxman, of which I was, being the president, hosted from our tribe of the organized village of Saxman. One of the things up to this point, up till today, please understand that I had the privilege of being able to do all the things that I wanted to do and then be answerable back to my tribe when I got back home. Well, my tribe wants to know what's going on. So I want to introduce our secretary, Sarah Abbott. Sarah Abbott, if you'd please rise. She's want to make sure that I'm doing a good job. And Bill Guthrie, William Guthrie, he's also a council member. And a young man who I want to encourage you folks. I want you to be encouraged because about 1.5 years ago, he came to me and he said, I want to run for the IRA. What should I do? And I told him, what you should do is develop a brochure, knock on every door, and tell them that you're interested in running for the IRA Council. And that's exactly what he did. He was 21 years old at that time, and he was the highest vote getter at that election. Please recognize Frank Saludo, who's our alternate. You know, as was stated earlier this morning by Ada Deer, is that where are the leaders? You're looking at them, especially if they're young. And Frank Saludo is a clear example of that. And I want to say thank you very much for stepping up to the plate, Frank. And so when in September we met in Ketchikan, and then we came to a head with the Administrative Order of 186. Now, please understand, prior to this, if I could take, I don't know how much time we were given here, but I just want to take some latitude here and just say just a little bit about this. Now, I had an opportunity to be in Washington, D.C. early on in September, and I received a telephone call from Bruce Patella, who was the Attorney General. I was checking out of our hotel, and when I got to the airport, I called him, he wasn't around. So I went to Seattle, and spent a couple of days with my sister, and I received a telephone call from Bruce Patello again, and I knew something was up. Well, he finally found me at home in Ketchikan, or my hometown and village of Saxman, and we visited. He said, the governor wishes to speak with you. He wants to do a signing of the administrative order, and he wants to hold that signing in Anchorage. I said, Bruce, you know how I feel about Anchorage. And he says, yes, I conveyed that thought to the governor, and he still wants me to at least try to talk you into going to Anchorage for the administrative order signing. Well, I called then my brother, Mike Williams, and told him of my objection of having the signing in Anchorage. I felt that we should have the signing in Saxman because that's where all the tribal leaders were going to be, and what better place to hold a signing but in the village of Saxman in our tribal house where all the tribal leaders were gathered. And Mike said, I'll go anywhere the governor wants to sign the document. That isn't what I was looking for. But I knew Mike was out of his normal terrain because he was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and he wasn't thinking very clearly. Well, in support of your chairman, Mike Williams, I supported his idea. But I didn't want to go down I didn't want to go down very easily. So when I called the governor on Sunday, he said, after the proper condolences or how you doing and all that kind of thing, he says, now, how about coming to Anchorage for the administrative signing? I said, no, I don't want to go to Anchorage for the administrative signing. Keeping in mind, I'm going to support my brother Mike because that's what he wanted to do. So in any event, I told him of the reasons why. I told him that I felt in my heart that the community of Anchorage, at least the legislatures, were not in support of Alaska Native people, and I wanted them to know that, and where they're going to know it is in their pocketbook because we're spending a lot of money in Anchorage without any thank yous. And so with that, he called me back on Monday. He said, I'll take all this under advisement and I'll get back to you. He called me back on Monday and he said, if I come to Saxman for the dinner on Wednesday, will you come to Anchorage on Friday? And I said, so long as you pay my way. And he did. You know, I was sharing this with my son who is 22 years old at school in college, and he says, Dad, you're a dork. You don't do those kinds of things with the governor. Well, at the administrative order signing, I challenged folks at that time. Please understand, I agreed to go to the administrative order signing thinking I would be exactly where you are today, sitting in the audience, you know, seeing this great thing that's occurring. But then when I got the agenda, I was the first speaker on the agenda. So what was I going to say? Well, I spoke for 30 minutes. They haven't asked me to speak since. Like now, they might not ask me to speak again. But in any event, with this, I challenged everyone there, and I'm going to challenge you today. And that is this. If you don't like what the governor is doing, pray for him. If you don't like what your tribal leaders are doing, pray for them. Because they are doing the level best that they can possibly do representing you. So I encourage you to pray for them on a daily basis. And please understand, since September 29th, I have prayed for the governor every single day. And that's not to boast. That's to say like this, Lord, bless our governor, keeping our Native people in mind. Now, there's a lot of discussion about whether this Millennium Agreement is a good agreement. Now, please understand that because we are people, we are human. And we, as human beings, will never make a perfect Millennium Agreement. So it's flawed, but that's the best document that we can work with in dealing with the state. And this is a window of opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. This is a window of opportunity. Let's not be arguing over here about what should go into that Millennium Agreement when we pass the window of opportunity. So I encourage you to be at the meeting tonight. Now, there is some talk about we should have our attorneys look at these documents. We've had the attorneys from Eklutna go over the documents, attorneys from Chilkat, Chilkoot tribe go over this document. Attorneys from Tlingit Haida go over the document. The attorney from National Congress of American Indians. So this is well looked at from attorneys with your future in mind. And as I stated over at the closing of the Bureau of Indian Affairs Providers Conference, I want a document tonight, on Saturday. I want this document to affect 7 generations down. I want this document to be raised to say by the 7th generation, this is what you agreed on, state of Alaska, so that it be to their benefit. And I'm asking you to think in those terms. Now, with this in mind, you know, I had started off early in May and September talking about the Millennium Agreement as being a marriage between the state of Alaska and between the tribes of Alaska. And then it was brought to my attention that marriages today last a maximum amount of time of 5 to 10 years. Well, because of divorces. Well, I just want to share one little story with you that I heard yesterday. It was kind of an interesting story, and please take the light that it is a story. Here was a lady who was in her early 90s, 92, 93 years old, neck of the woods, and she went into her attorney's office and said, I want you to prepare all the paperwork so I can divorce my husband. Her husband was 96 years old. And the attorney said, why do you want to do this? You've been married for more than 70 years. The lady said, because my husband and I agreed upon early on that as soon as all our children are dead, we're going to get a divorce. Well, I don't want this Millennium Agreement to be a marriage. I want it to affect us 7 generations down. And that's really important to us. And please understand, you know, here I am speaking so forcefully and so knowledgeable, but please understand, I could not be here had it not been the support of Alaska Intertribal Council, had it not been the support of Deborah Vole and her staff. Thank you for your time. It has been a true honor to be here in the same room with you. It's been a true honor to be a leader in your behalf. And I only hope in my heart that I have lived up to your great expectations.
I'm the executive director for the tribal government, and we take an interest in all tribal issues with the state and nationally, and we're a member of AITC. We're very interested in the Millennium Agreement and a relationship between the tribes and the state government.
The next person on our panel is Lee Stepan. He's CEO, Vice President of the Native Village of Eklutna, and also our chairman for the Accord Committee. Lee.
I'd appreciate it if I could see those 48 delegates in this room stand up so you can recognize them. This document may be one of the most important we do. There's one on page 1. It says each side respects the sovereignty of the other. There's question as to the legality of the state and whether it has sovereignty. I'm neither can tell you yes or no. As stated, I think I got now 3 legal opinions. I got one from International Indian Treaty Council, David Case, and our own attorney, Sarah Heidemann. I asked everybody to see if they can get their own legal opinion. On page 7 of this document, there's another section where we haven't come to consensus on. And it's dealing with consultation. I think consultation, this is a pretty good start. So if the state was here, they'd start to learn how to do that. On page 14, the parties agree that the state may work with Alaska Intertribal Council on behalf of the signatory tribes. Well, there's been a question, there's some tribes not members of AITC. So they wanted their voices heard too. On page 16, there's a resolution of conflict between the parties. And then there's each tribe has a right to elevate an issue of importance to another decision-making authority of the state. Those are areas where no consensus have been reached. One that I didn't see on there, but there's a disclaimer section. My understanding that this document boils down to a gentleman's handshake. You can't use it in the court of law. It's not enforceable in any way. And you don't extinguish any kind of rights you have. Personally, if I went to court and the judge subpoenaed the document, ain't nothing I'm going to do to stop him from getting that document into court. So them kind of questions all need to be answered.
The one I appreciate most is the updates, the legal updates that Kendall Miller gives us about all the lawsuits that are in motion now, and just finding out what they are and what the status of them is, things like that, is the one I find most helpful.
Alaska Intertribal Council versus Alaska, that's the suit by AITC, the Native Justice Center, 10 tribes and 9 individual natives against the state of Alaska. Individuals include Chairman Mike Williams and former Chairman Willie Casile. Suit against the state of Alaska that charges the state with racial discrimination against Alaska Native villages, off-road Alaska Native villages, in the provision of police protection. The undisputed evidence in the record thus far shows that predominantly non-native villages on the road system receive full police protection from the troopers for both misdemeanors and felonies, and that the troopers can arrive in emergency situations on the road generally within 45 minutes. Whereas for the off-road native villages, other than regional centers, the troopers only handle felonies, and generally only serious felonies, and leave the misdemeanor offenses to village public safety officers, VPSOs, or village police officers, VPOs, but 75 native villages off the road system lack any police whatsoever. And many only have VPOs, who generally have little or no training. And even the 75 villages that have VPSOs do not receive anywhere near the same police protection that the troopers provide on road communities. And they don't, not because they don't try, they try heroically, but they fail to succeed for several reasons. They fail to succeed because the present system prevents them from providing good police protection in the villages. Under state law, VPSOs only have the same law enforcement powers as a private citizen. They have no more police powers than a private citizen. Under trooper policy, they are prohibited from making arrests, investigating felonies, or filing criminal complaints without the prior approval of the troopers. The VPSOs only receive 1/6 of the training of the troopers. They get 200 hours of basic training, the troopers get 1,200. The VPOs are paid about 1/3 the salary of the troopers. They receive virtually no overtime. They are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for emergency situations. They receive virtually no benefits compared to what the troopers receive. And the VPSOs have a 55% turnover rate, which means that over half of them at any given time don't have any training at all in law enforcement. Yet they're supposed to protect the villages. VPSOs are unequipped. Most of them have to use their own snow-goes or four-wheelers. They lack rape kits, they lack bulletproof vests, and they're prohibited from carrying firearms. As one of our witnesses testified, the VPSOs are generally the only people in the villages that are unarmed. And yet they're the ones that have to confront dangerous armed situations. Now the villages with VPOs are in even a much worse situation. VPOs generally have no training at all.